A trusted friend leans across the table, smiles, and tells you exactly what you wanted to hear. 3 weeks later, you realize that conversation cost you your reputation, your leverage, maybe even your future. So here's the question: were you betrayed by one person or by your own naive understanding of human nature? Machiavelli built his name on a brutal insight. Most people don't lose because they are weak. They lose because they keep expecting human beings to be better than they are. And if you think that lesson belongs to medieval courts, not modern life, you're already vulnerable. But first, let me tell you why this matters more today than ever. Florence, early 1500, a city of art, silk, gold, and smiling assassins. Power wasn't just fought for on battlefields. It was traded in private rooms, hidden in marriages, disguised in praise, and sharpened in compliments. This was the world Niccolò Machiavelli studied, not as an abstract philosopher removed from reality, but as a diplomat standing inches away from ambition, treachery, and fear. He negotiated with kings. He observed generals. He watched republics rise on ideals and collapse under vanity. Then he was discarded, imprisoned, tortured, and exiled. And from that exile came some of the most unsettling political and psychological observations ever written. Machiavelli is often reduced to one cartoonish idea: manipulation, ruthlessness. Be the villain before the villain gets you. But that reading is too shallow. What he actually exposed was something darker and more useful: the operating system of human nature itself, not human nature at its best. Human nature under pressure. Human nature when status, fear, desire, and survival collide. This is why his work still matters in the age of social media. Office politics, dating apps, branding, and public image. The costumes changed. The instincts didn't. People still admire strength and resent it at the same time. They still preach virtue and reward dominance. They still claim to want honesty, then punish inconvenient truth. And here's where most people get it wrong. They think dark psychology begins with learning how to control others. It doesn't. It begins with seeing, without illusion, what people are actually like when self-interest is involved. That is why Machiavelli belongs in a larger conversation with Stoic philosophy, ancient wisdom, and modern Stoicism. The Stoics taught you how to govern yourself. Machiavelli teaches you what happens when other people refuse to do the same. One discipline gives you inner stability, the other gives you outer realism. Together, they become armor. And the 7 laws we're about to break down all point to one uncomfortable revelation. What he wrote next changed everything. Machiavelli's first law of human nature is simple. People are driven more by self-interest than by principle. They may speak the language of morality, loyalty, or friendship, but when pressure rises, most choose advantage. He writes, "Men are so simple and so much creatures of circumstance that the deceiver will always find someone ready to be deceived." That line is not just about con artists, it's about need. People don't believe lies because lies are persuasive. They believe lies because lies protect something they desperately want to be true: status, love, security, innocence. And that leads to law 2. People see what they hope to see, not reality. Interpretation, not truth. Comfort. This is why dark psychology works so well in modern life. Not because manipulators are magical, because human beings are predictable when desire gets involved. You've seen this in workplaces. The charming incompetent gets promoted because he performs confidence. The blunt competent person gets sidelined because truth has bad public relations. Controversial, good. It's true more often than most people want to admit. And here's the pattern interrupt. Honesty by itself is overrated, not morally, strategically. If you tell the truth with no awareness of timing, emotion, hierarchy, or ego, you are not practicing virtue. You are practicing social blindness. Machiavelli understood something that modern psychology keeps rediscovering. People are not rational creatures who sometimes get emotional. They are emotional creatures who rationalize afterward. That applies to voters, lovers, audiences, bosses, rivals, and yes, to you. So law 3 is this: appearances often matter more than reality. He says, everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. This is one of the most dangerous truths in all philosophy because it offends our idealism. We want a world where substance always wins. It doesn't, not automatically. In politics, branding, leadership, and relationships, Perception often arrives before character ever gets a chance to speak. Does that mean become fake? No. It means understand that if you ignore perception, someone more cynical will manage it for you. That's not pessimism, that's survival. But there's something even more shocking. Law 4. People are more loyal to outcomes than to ideals. As long as you help them feel safe, successful, or included, they call you virtuous. The moment you threaten their comfort, even for their own good, their loyalty evaporates. This is where Machiavelli's most infamous idea enters the room. He writes, "It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one of the two has to be wanting." Now pause before reacting. He is not saying fear is morally superior. He is saying love is fragile when built on convenience. Fear, especially fear of consequences, is often more reliable than affection. And here's the controversial statement that will probably split the comments. A huge amount of what people call kindness is really just weakness wearing a halo. If your kindness has no boundaries, no standards, no willingness to disappoint, manipulative people don't experience it as virtue. They experience it as access. This is where Stoic philosophy becomes essential. The Stoics taught that your peace cannot depend on the approval of unstable people. Modern Stoicism adds something practical. Emotional regulation is not passivity. It is disciplined power. You do not need to become cruel, but you do need to become difficult to exploit. That means Law 5, people test limits instinctively. They probe, they watch your face when they interrupt you, they notice what you laugh off, they measure whether your no is real or decorative. And here's where most people get it wrong. They think boundaries are announced once. They're not. Boundaries are taught through repetition and consequence. What happens when someone crosses the line? What changes? What do you remove? Human nature respects what it cannot easily bend. This is where it gets interesting, because Machiavelli is not just diagnosing the world. He's forcing a personal transformation. To understand dark psychology without becoming dark yourself, you need two things at once: clear eyes and clean hands. See manipulation early, name motive accurately, refuse fantasy, but do not let that knowledge rot your character, because the moment realism becomes bitterness, you become predictable too. And that brings us to the most overlooked law of all, the one that explains why entire societies reward deception while claiming to worship virtue. Law 6. Most people judge by results, not methods. Machiavelli says, in the actions of all men, and especially of princes, where there is no court to appeal to, one judges by the result. Read that again psychologically, not just politically. If someone wins, many people will rewrite the story to make the victory seem justified. If someone loses, those same people will call the exact same traits foolish, reckless, or immoral. Success launders behavior in the public mind. Failure exposes it. That's why human nature can be so hard to read. People do not merely love morality. They love alignment with power. They want to stand near what appears effective. They call it admiration, but often it's gravity. Ask yourself, how often have you seen people condemn dominance until dominance starts winning? How often have you seen someone preach authenticity, then carefully curate every image they post? How often have you watched a crowd confuse confidence with competence? This is not just philosophy, it's psychology in real time. Law 7 then is the culmination. People would often rather be comforted than awakened. This is the engine behind propaganda, image management, seduction, office politics, cults of personality, and even self-deception. Ancient wisdom warned us about this long before modern algorithms amplified it. Human beings do not simply seek truth. They seek narratives that preserve identity. If the truth threatens who they think they are, many will reject the truth and protect the self. And that is why Machiavelli remains relevant to self-improvement, not because he teaches you to manipulate everyone around you, because he destroys the fantasy that sincerity alone will protect you. Here is the synthesis. People are ruled by interest. They are seduced by appearances. They test weakness. They follow outcomes. They prefer stories that flatter them. And they often punish the person who names these truths too clearly. So what do you do with that? Become cold, suspicious, permanently armored? No, that would be another form of defeat. The real lesson is higher than cynicism. Use Stoic philosophy inwardly, Machiavellian realism outwardly. Internally, govern your impulses, master your emotions, detach from approval. Externally, read incentives, notice patterns, protect your image, and never confuse words with character. Modern Stoicism without psychological realism becomes naive. Dark psychology without ethics becomes corruption. But combined with philosophy, discipline, and self-knowledge, these insights become clarity. That is the aha most people miss. Machiavelli was not only exposing others, he was exposing the part of you that still wants the world to reward innocence automatically. It won't. So the question becomes, can you face human nature without losing your own? Because that is the real test. Go back to the opening scene. The smile, the compliment, the betrayal. What actually destroyed you there? Was it another person's deception or your refusal to imagine they had motives behind the mask? This is why these 7 laws matter more today than ever. We live in an age of polished identities, emotional branding, algorithmic persuasion, and carefully engineered appearances. Dark psychology no longer belongs only to royal courts or corrupt ministers. It lives in your feed, your office, your friendships, your ambitions, and sometimes in the story you tell yourself. But this isn't an invitation to become paranoid. It's an invitation to become precise. For the next 7 days, watch people more carefully than you speak. Notice what changes when status enters the room. Notice who becomes warm when you're useful and distant when you're not. Notice who respects a boundary and who negotiates with it. Notice where you yourself are tempted to believe what is flattering over what is true. That practice alone will teach you more about human nature than 100 comforting slogans. And if you pair that realism with self-command, real modern stoicism, not performative detachment, you become very difficult to manipulate. You stop begging to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop confusing charisma with character. You stop handing trust to appearances. And maybe for the first time, you stop treating philosophy as decoration and start using it as defense. Most people will spend their entire lives avoiding this truth. Will you see clearly or be used?